So again, today we're talking about confident citation in APA style. We'll start with talking a little bit about why APA style citation is important, go into when a sentence needs a citation. We'll talk about how to evaluate search results to find sources, and then go into identifying what type of source you're actually working with. And as I mentioned, we will have time for questions. My name is Samantha Denneney. I'm the development manager on the APA style team, and I'm here with my colleagues, Chelsea Lee, the instructional lead for APA style, and Jasmine Bridges, our development specialist on the APA style team. We're members of the team that create, update, edit, and promote and teach APA style guidelines and create products like the publication manual, concise guide, and APA style manual. We also have a couple of special guests who, Anne and Tim, who will be in the chat and the Q&A to help us answer questions. And of course, Robin, our host. We're going to start with a poll. So you should be seeing a poll question pop up on your screen. What is your biggest APA style citation challenge? Is it formatting citations? Maybe knowing when you should include a citation? Evaluating whether a source is trustworthy, or finding the reference type? If it's something else, go ahead and put that in the chat, but we will give you just a couple of maybe 30 seconds to put your response in. Okay, Robin, can we close the poll and see what everyone thinks? Do you get the responses, Robin?
Yes. Okay. We have formatting citations at 42%.
Ooh.
Knowing when to cite, 25%. Evaluating whether a source is trustworthy, 15%. And finding the reference type, 18%.
Awesome. Well, it looks like there are lots of questions on all of these different things. So we will hopefully be addressing them for you and hopefully giving you guys some clarity into APA style citation. So to start, let's just talk briefly about why APA style citation is important. I recently read an opinion article in Inside Higher Ed from an English instructor who was talking about various citation styles. And she mentioned that many students see citation styles as a collection of at times maddeningly opaque rules that to students seem solely designed to satisfy the whims of the academy. But what really is going on is academic integrity matters. Entering the scholarly conversation and attributing work properly matters. Style serves as more than a mechanical exercise. At its best, style facilitates a way of thinking and being in scholarship, supporting scholars to orient themselves within the broader academy. So we really believe that that APA style is not about putting periods and commas in the right place. It's really about our three main principles, which are clarity, precision, and inclusion. And our overall goal is excellence in communication. So writing styles are not just about rules, proving that you can follow certain instructions. Our goal is to prevent writers from reinventing the wheel. With APA style, we want to promote consistency, attention to detail, critical thinking, academic integrity, and consideration of your author or of your audience and readers. So citation can seem really daunting at times. You might think there are a million different ways to cite something. You don't know whether the source is a good source to cite. You don't know what information to include, but it can be helpful to reflect on the fact that the purpose of citation is just for a couple of different reasons. Number one, to give credit where credit is due. If your idea came from another individual, it's very important that you're giving them credit. Also, to substantiate your ideas. So when you're writing your paper, are these ideas something that you just came up with, Or did you get these ideas from research? And also allowing readers to trace your work. So being part of that scientific academic community where one piece of science leads to another. So if your readers are really interested, they could actually read more from the sources you cited. So a lot of times when you hear things like source, reference, and citation, it can seem like we are using them just interchangeably. They're completely synonymous, but they actually do have different meanings. So when we talk about the source, we're talking about the work that is cited. So the actual book, the actual article, the actual blog post, things like that. When we talk about the reference, we're talking about what goes in your reference list entry. So that is author, date, title, source. It allows you to identify and locate the work, and you can see an example of what a reference is below. Citations are a short way to refer to a reference list entry at the appropriate place in your text. So that is the author and the year. And it might look like a parenthetical citation or a narrative citation, which you can see here. So when does a sentence need a citation? Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Samantha. So the topic of when does a sentence need a citation is probably one of the most common questions that students encounter as they are figuring out how to write. And so let's explore this in, I hope, a very practical way. So the thing that we will do is go to the poll question next, and it's a true or false question. The question being, does every sentence need a citation? So let's take a minute to explore that topic and see what y'all think. And then Robin, when you're ready, please let's close the poll, and can you share with the results with us? I think they get delivered to you faster. So let's wrap that up and see what everyone thought. Oh, we have 90%, 98%. Every sentence does not need a citation. That's correct. You got most all of you got the question correct, which is great. So we now are going to go from when does the sentence need a citation? Let's get to the next slide. So the basic principle behind when to cite is answering the question of who knows this information. Basically, if everybody knows, that's considered common knowledge, and that does not need a citation or a reference. However, there's no hard and fast rule. There's no list of what is common knowledge and what is not common knowledge, because you do want to provide a citation when most people would not know the information. Now, if you're in doubt about whether you know, whether others know or not, I think the best thing is if you had to look it up, then provide a citation. So examples of common knowledge would be things that are known by most people, world events, current history, basic facts, whereas specialized knowledge would be things that are known by experts. The results of scientific research, definitions, statistics, all of that, you're going to want to provide a citation. So here are some examples of sentences that contain common knowledge and thus no citation is needed. The first one is the sentence about the COVID-19 pandemic being disruptive to life. I think we can all agree that everybody knows that. Similarly, you might be describing a problem or a situation in a general sense, like maybe you're talking about how news media are portraying psychological topics or health topics. That kind of broad statement is not going to need a citation. Similarly, if you were posing a scenario or saying, imagine this, here's a hypothetical, you don't need to provide a citation for that. That's just sort of an idea that you're putting forth. Now contrast that with specialized knowledge, which you would want to have a citation for. So that would be things known by experts. So if you're talking in more detail about maybe stress or the pandemic, the more detailed you become, the more likely it is, I think, that a source is going to be helpful to readers. Likewise, if you're discussing the results of specific research studies, you're going to want to provide a citation to those research studies. And then another similar case is people often like to provide definitions or statistics, and you'll want to give a citation with its reference list entry for that as well. So the basic principle with creating citations is that you want to include an in-text citation when you're introducing information from a source. So as Samantha mentioned, examples of what we mean by source is the work that you're citing, like an article or the book or the web page. And then the in-text citations correspond to the reference list entry that's at the end of your paper. So that's kind of how it's structured. And then as you're writing the sentences that the citations are in, I want to encourage you all to prioritize paraphrasing, which is putting things into your own words rather than quotation. That is a common mistake that student writers have, where they have too many quotations and not enough paraphrasing. And the examples in this presentation are of paraphrasing. So quotations are possible, but I'm showing you paraphrasing. So let's look at the format. There's two main formats for in-text citations, parenthetical and narrative. When it's parenthetical, that means the author and the year are in parentheses with a comma in between them. And parenthetical citations are great when you want the sentence to be about the idea. So you say what the idea is, and then in parentheses, where you got it from. In contrast, the narrative format has the author names incorporated as part of the sentence that you're writing, and then the year is in parentheses. So this allows you to emphasize who had the idea. So, for example, if you're quoting, say, statistics, like government health statistics, you can say, oh, these are from the CDC, or this is from the World Health Organization, and that narrative citation allows the sentence to include where it's coming from. To learn more about the formats, check out, it's on our website, on the APA Style website, about basic author date citation formats. Can show you more about what the formats look like. So let's look at some examples of what a parenthetical and narrative citation look like. A citation could be anywhere in a sentence, but parenthetical citations are often at the end, and narrative citations are often at the beginning. And if you read the examples, you can maybe see why. So in the parenthetical, you've introduced the idea, and then you say, this is where it's from. Whereas in the narrative example, the point is to focus the reader's attention on this landmark review article. The fact that this article exists is important for the sentence, and so we're emphasizing that in the way that the sentence is written. So now I'm going to take you through 4 common mistakes that you can fix to become more confident at putting citations in your sentences. The first mistake is when the citation is not actually enclosed in the sentence. So like all of these plants are in the greenhouse on the slide, the period has to be the last thing in closing the sentence. You have to put the citation in the sentence. So you can see in the example here how when the period comes first and then the citation is kind of hanging out. And usually the writing would continue and more sentences would follow, and it's confusing to read like this. Instead, you want to have the period be the last thing in the sentence after any parenthetical citation that might be at the end of the sentence. A second mistake is citing a source twice in one sentence. if everything in one sentence comes from one source, one citation is enough in that sentence. In our incorrect example, the sentence has both a narrative citation and a parenthetical citation in the same sentence. That is too much and it is unnecessary. You can pick one. So you can do it either way. You could do a narrative example and say, oh, DeVries et al. Found the students who exercised longer ruminated less about their studies. Or you could just say, when students exercise longer, they ruminated less about their studies and not worry about the names of the authors. So it can be done both ways, but you don't need two citations. The third mistake is waiting too many sentences to cite. So if you introduce new information, cite it in that sentence. The example shows now 3 sentences about the same study, the same topic. The thing to do is to cite it in the first sentence so that I know as a reader right away what your source is. And then the subsequent sentences, because of the way that they are written, it is clear to readers that I am still talking about the same topic. But you want to put it in right away so that I don't have to wait. Because I, as a reader someone who's never read your paper before is not going to know until you tell them where something comes from. So putting it in the sentence where the information is introduced is very important. And then the last mistake I want to talk about is repeating the citation in every sentence when all of the sentences come from the same source. So when all the sentences or multiple sentences in a row in a paragraph come from one source, one citation in the first sentence is enough. So this example is the same 3 sentences from the previous slide, only now we're seeing a common mistake of having the same citation repeated at the end of every sentence. That is unnecessary. It is overcitation. Instead, that first citation in the first sentence is sufficient because of how that it's written. It's clear. You do want to cite again in some cases, like if the source changes or if it's a new paragraph, you kind of just want to establish clarity again for readers if that happens. And to continue that, if you're concerned that it's unclear, narrative citations are a great solution. So here, the example, I've rewritten it to use narrative citations and say, DeVries et al. 2025 found when students exercise longer than usual, etc. And then the next sentence says, however, they found. So where I say they found, you know that I'm talking about DeVries et al. 2025, and I don't need to put the words DeVries et al. 2025 there again, because it's clear from the way that it's written. So you can use lots of different kinds of language for this with the study or the authors or a pronoun for the authors. And the only thing to be wary of is if it would cause confusion. If you've got multiple works by the same authors and they're from different years, then you would want to be more precise just so that readers would be double certain what you're talking about. So that brings us to our summary of when a sentence needs a citation. To summarize, you do not need to cite common knowledge, and you should cite information when it's first presented. When you're doing your citation, make sure the citation is in the sentence and that the period is the last thing in the sentence. Don't repeat a citation within a sentence or have 2 to the same work within one sentence. That's too much. And within a paragraph, when every sentence in a row is coming from the same source, you don't need to repeat the citation. You can put it once in the first sentence and use context to show that the sentences are related within that paragraph. And narrative citations are a great choice for achieving that strategy without it being oversighted. And of course, to repeat the citation if it's unclear or a new paragraph or if you're uncertain.